Hello and welcome. It's your boy Dane Johnson 3_16, aka Gravity, the man who has never met a mic he didn't like. And I told you not to worry, I'm back with another serial killer story. But first, because I don't have a lawyer on retainer, here's a quick disclaimer. Viewer discretion is advised. We will be talking about touchy subjects here tonight. And without further ado, we're going to get right into it. We're talking about John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo, better known as the Beltway Snipers or the DC Snipers. Now, we'll get into the date of birth here. On December 31st, 1960, John Allen Muhammad was born, making him a Capricorn. And on February 18th, 1985, Lee Boyd Malvo was born, making him an Aquarius. So we'll get into the characteristics of these guys before we get into the backstory and all that. Now, these two gentlemen were snipers, these two cold-blooded killers. That was their method of attack. They would hide in the back of a hollowed-out blue car, as you can see on your screen right now, and they would shoot people from out of the trunk. Now, a lot of debate has went into these guys, whether they should be categorized as serial killers or spree killers, because their killings happened in such a quick span, from February 2002 to October 2002. But that February murder was a lone murder committed by Lee Boyd Malvo as a form, almost like an initiation. So John Allen Muhammad knew that he had him wrapped around his finger and he could get this kid to do whatever he wanted. You got to remember, at the time, Lee Boyd Malvo was only 17 years old when this happened. So their murder method, of course, it was shooting. We're going to get into their known victims. James Martin, 55 years old at the time of his death. We have James Buchanan, who was 39. Prem Kumar Walekar, who was 54, Sarah Ramos, who was 34, Lori A. Lewis Riviera, who was 25, Pascal Charlotte, 72, Dean Harold Myers, 53, Kenneth Bridges, 53, Linda Franklin, 47, Conrad Johnson, 35, Kenya Nicole Cook, 23, Jerry Ray Taylor, 60, Billie Jean Dillon, 37, Million Waldemarian, 41, Claudine Parker, 52, Hong Im Boulanger, 45. Now, the crimes of these murders took place in Washington, Maryland, and Washington, in Maryland, and in Virginia. And the status of these two guys, Muhammad was actually sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection on November 10th, 2009. Malvo is currently sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Now, a little backstory here now on Lee Boyd Malvo, just on that last sentence. Of course, this book was written a little earlier. I did a little digging, and I found out that he's actually at the Red Onion State Prison in Virginia. It's a supermax, and he actually had his sentence lowered to life without parole to actually life. So he's actually been up for parole at least one time. Of course, that was denied, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later, a little bit more, because we're going to get into the background of John Allen Muhammad and a couple of things that I've told everybody when we started this. I kind of wanted people to pick up on similarities, and you're going to notice one when I read it out here. And so Muhammad was born John Allen Williams, and after his mother died when he was 4, an aunt raised him in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He married after high school, and as a couple, they had a son they called Lindbergh. Muhammad joined the Louisiana Army National Guard, and it seemed as though he had a promising career in the military. But he started getting into trouble in the early 1980s, once for striking an officer and another time for failing to report to duty. Now you got to pick up on that. The military thing again, which is like wild. I've talked about, well, this is the 4th episode I'm doing, and every single one of them had military backgrounds or some sort of like authority, a job. It's just weird how they get into that. So in 1985, this would have been the year that Malvo was born. So Muhammad in 1985, him and his first wife, they'd separated, and he enlisted in the U.S. Army. So there he goes. Now he's in the Army. And by now he had converted to Islam. While he was stationed in Washington State, he met Mildred Green, whom he would later marry, and the marriage produced 3 children. And Muhammad was doing really well in the Army. He learned to become a skilled marksman, as we, a lot of innocent people would come to find out as well, unfortunately. And he served duties in Germany, and as well as in the Middle East during the Gulf War. Now in '94, Muhammad decided to leave the Army. He had made 2 attempts to start his own business, but failed both times. His marriage was failing, and in 1999, Mildred filed for divorce. Muhammad proceeded to make threats towards her, and she was able to obtain a restraining order. Soon after, Muhammad took their children, and he fled to Jamaica. It is here where he met Lee Boyd Malvo. So, this is a guy who kidnapped his own kids and moved out of the States to Jamaica. A guy who was in the Army, a guy who learned how to become a very skilled marksman, and a guy, from the sounds of it, with his 2 wives, was pretty controlling and pretty manipulative. So, we're going to get into, at the time, young Lee Boyd Malvo, and we're going to learn how these 2 guys met and what happened soon after. Now, Malvo was born to Leslie Malvo and Una James, and he spent his early years living in Kingston, Jamaica. The relationship between his parents was volatile, and his father left the home when Malvo was 5 or 6. Leslie's departure following a violent argument where he had punched Una, and she in turn had attacked him with a machete. I guess you're not really married until one pulls out the machete. I got that to look forward to. That's great. Una was a very... No need to laugh in the middle of a serious podcast. I apologize for that. I just dug myself a little bit of a grave there. So Una was a very strong woman, and Leslie couldn't tolerate her anymore. From then onwards, as his mother chased an income, young Malvo was passed from family member to family member, and also friends of the family as well. So he was a young boy who grew up without his father, and his mom, trying to make money, would just kind of pass him around from family member to even friends of the family because she's working too much. So his mother would regularly drop him off at someone's house while she went away to work, and this devastated the young boy. He would shift from home to home, and sometimes he would end up in shelters or boys' homes. So sometimes, he's not even staying at anybody's house. He's at shelters and homeless shelters and stuff. Before this guy's 18, he lived one hell of a life. Despite all this, Malvo was an intelligent child, and he continued to go to school even though his home life was so unsettled. Each time Una came back into town, she would uproot Malvo from wherever he was staying. They moved around the area multiple times. Just when he would settle into place and into a school and he would have friends, they'd move again. And as he became a teenager, he started to seek out his father, but their relationship, well, that was never really mended. Oh man, that's kind of sad. And it looks like his mom just stayed out of his life after that. That's terrible. And by the time Malvo had crossed paths, had come into contact with John Allen Muhammad, he was in desperate need of not only a father figure, but just an adult in his life who was willing to take him in and give him the time of day. So they developed a mutual friendship and rapport, and their relationship would lead to a future filled with violence. Muhammad had successfully brainwashed Malvo into believing every word he said, and it was easy for Muhammad to convince him to follow him to America. So Lee Boyd Malvo wasn't even a legal citizen of the U.S. when these murders were committed. This is a kid who was brainwashed. You know, that's the thing, you know, I know I'm sounding like I feel sorry for the guy, because, like, in a way, like, I kind of do. Like, he's a kid, but at the same time, man, when it's 10 plus people and you're the one who pulled the trigger, brainwashed or not, you're the one who pulled the trigger. So I hope he stays in prison. It's crazy to think that, like, you're sentenced to 3 life sentences without parole, and 2 of them become overturned, and the other one is just kind of like, he's up for parole now every few years. That's wild. Like, one thing, well, I'll say it later. I'll save that. Just a little tidbit for later, now that I remember it. The first victim of the snipers was Kenya Nicole Cook. We're getting into the murders. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead there. And that was on February 16th, 2002. So I know about this one. This is the one where John Allen Muhammad had actually broke up with his girlfriend, and as like a showing of like trust, he had said to Lee Boyd Malvo, like, I want you to go to my ex-girlfriend's house and I want you to kill her. And when he went there and he rang the doorbell, unfortunately it was her young niece, Kenya Nicole Cook, who had answered the door, and Malvo shot her right in the head, just in cold blood, left her, ran back home, and that was something they weren't able to tie him to until he had actually confessed to that when he was actually arrested and in prison already. So we'll get back here. I just, you know, I knew about that one, so I didn't really have to read about it. So there's an unidentified male as well who this book doesn't have any information on because it was never made public. He was actually killed during a robbery, and Jerry Ray Taylor was shot in the back, and that was on March 19th, and that was in Arizona. This murder was linked after Muhammad had confessed to it. The last victim killed in the first half of the year was Billie Jean Dillon, who was killed on May 27th. Now, on September 21st, Million Walderman was shot in the head in Atlanta, Georgia. Although Muhammad never confessed to this shooting, this case was attributed to him because of the nature and similarities of the murder and the other crimes. So again, like serial killers, they kind of have calling cards, and you know, when there's only so many snipings going on, like, it's not a fucking everyday thing, so obviously they're able to tie him to that. Okay, so we'll get back into this. It's looking like Muhammad actually shot people. I was mistaken. I thought Lee Boyd Malvo was the only one to pull the trigger, but Muhammad had shot Claudine Lee Parker in the back on September 21st while he was robbing the liquor store where she worked. Then on September 23rd, Hong Im, wow, I'm sorry. That was brutal. Hong M. Ballinger was shot in the head in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On October 2nd, James Martin was shot outside a food warehouse, and that was in Silver Spring, Maryland, where he was killed. And all of those killings were done by Lee Boyd Malvo, who was 17 at the time. Now, on October 3rd, the shootings escalated, where James Buchanan was shot in the chest in Rockville, Maryland, and Prem Kumar Walekar was shot in the chest and arm in Aspen Hill. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. I'm just not really good at throwing in accents. In Norbert, Sarah Ramos died after being shot in the head. And Lori A. Lewis Rivera was killed in Kensington by a gunshot to the back in Washington. Pascal Charlotte died after a shot to the chest. Dean Harold Myers was shot at a gas station in Manassas, Virginia on October 9th when he was killed by a gunshot to the head. Kenneth Bridges was shot and killed on October 11th in Fredericksburg while pumping gas at a station. The last two known victims were Linda Franklin and Conrad Johnson on October 14th. Franklin was shot in the head as she helped her husband put packages in their car at the Home Depot store in Falls Church. On October 22nd, Johnson was shot in the abdomen while helping an elderly woman on the bus. He later died in hospital. It's crazy. I was watching a documentary on that earlier, and the elderly lady who was helping on the bus would literally, so you'll notice, at the end here, when I list everybody off, you'll see the pattern, but she would actually hide behind a tree because she was so afraid of getting shot, and this guy would get out of the bus, and he would be like, "Hey, ma'am, I'm a big guy, stand behind me, or beside me, they gotta get through me before they get to you." And they fucking shot and killed him, man. I don't think he could get any more heroic than that. That's kind of wild. Okay, so we're going to get into the timeline of the known murders now. On February 16th, 2002, Kenya Nicole Cook, 21, shot and killed. February or March of 2002, that unidentified male who was shot and killed during the robbery. On March 9th, 2002, Jerry Ray Taylor, 60, was killed. May 27th, 2002, Billie Jean Dillon was killed. So those were the spread out murders that were committed by the both of them, by both Muhammad and Malvo. And now we're going to get in, and that would have already qualified them to be a serial killer, but this is where the experts in the profile say that they really went into a spree killing, because this is just crazy. So, two on the same day, on September 21st, 2002, Million Walder Marion, who was 41, and Claudine Lee Parker, who was 52, they were both shot. And all of these are by Malvo now. All these snipings. And then on September 23rd, 2002, Hong M. Boulanger, who was 45, he was shot and killed. So October 2nd, 2002, James Martin, 55, was shot and killed. October 3rd, 2002, James Buchanan, shot and killed. October 3rd, 2002, Prem Kumar Walekar, 54, shot and killed. October 3rd, 2002, Sarah Ramos, 34, shot and killed. October 3rd, 2002, Lori A. Lewis Riviera, 25, shot and killed. October 3rd, 2002, Pascal Charlotte, 72, was shot and killed. That's crazy. Like that many murders on one day. And what's wild about this, it isn't in the book because I read a little bit ahead, was that John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo were actually like spotted together after that at a local like sports bar, and that news story was playing about all them people being shot. And Malvo actually like went up to the TV and turned the volume up, and they both stood under that TV in that crowded place with people like waiting for their order to come in, like watching that, which is like crazy to think about. October 9th, 2002, Dean Harold Myers, 53, shot and killed. October 14th, 2002, Linda Franklin, 47 years old, shot and killed. I accidentally missed one, I apologize. October 11th, 2002, Kenneth Bridges, 53, was shot and killed. And the last known victim, October 22nd, 2002, Conrad Johnson, who was 35, was shot and killed. Wow, man. You don't like really think of it, but then like when you list off that many names and it takes you that long to rattle them off, like it's a pretty fucked up feeling. You feel like a lot more thankful for everything you got. That's for damn sure. So the arrest and trial. At one of the murder scenes, a note had been left by either Malvo or Muhammad telling police to look at a liquor store robbery where a murder had taken place in Monogamy, Alabama. Investigators located the scene and found a magazine with fingerprints on it. They were identified as belonging to Malvo because it was known that Malvo was associated with Muhammad. He was also investigated. Police discovered Muhammad had owned a blue Chevrolet Caprice, not spotted on your screen right now, a former police vehicle. In 2002, the information was broadcast to the public, and it was soon located at a rest stop in Marysville, Maryland, and that's where he was arrested. In Virginia, the trial for the murder of Myers started in October of 2003, and Muhammad was found guilty. The next month, he was sentenced to death for the capital murder and was then extradited to Maryland to face murder charges there. There, he was convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder. On May 30th, 2006, one of the most crucial pieces of evidence was the testimony of Malvo. Muhammad never went to trial for the other murders, largely because he had already received the harshest penalty possible. His legal team made appeals regarding the Myers murder conviction and subsequent sentence, but was then, those were all denied. So all of his appeals were denied after that. Malvo went to trial in December of 2003, and on December 18th, he was found guilty of capital murder and terrorism and the use of a firearm during the commission of a murder for the death of Linda Franklin. On March 10th, 2004, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Malvo entered a plea he entered a plea deal for the murder of Kenneth Bridges and the wounding of Caroline Sewell, and he received another life sentence. On October 26, 2004, in 2006. That's weird how that says that. It's like 2 different years. Malvo confessed to murdering Jesse Jerry in 2002. In November of 2006, he received further life sentences for the murders of 6 victims in Maryland. During an interview with William Shatner in July of 2010, Malvo claimed he was responsible or involved in more than 40 murders. These claims have not been proven by the police. I hate that I just read that he was interviewed by William Shatner. That's kind of fucked up. that they like would make a mockery out of that. And I don't know, I didn't like see the interview, but like if you know who William Shatner is, like that doesn't really scream that that's going to be good. Got to take a quick drink there. Malvo appealed the Maryland federal courts in June of 2013, and he had his life sentences vacated, but the appeal was denied a year later. A further appeal was filed in July of 2014, and this time, 2 of his life sentences were overturned. Malvo remains in prison this day, waiting to be resentenced. And so, that is like what I touched on earlier. This guy's actually, like, went up for parole. Like, he's been to the parole board, which is, like, absolutely crazy. So, on November 10th, 2009, Muhammad was led to the execution chamber at the Greensville Correctional Center. He had been given the choice of lethal injection or the electric chair, but he declined to choose. So, he was given the lethal injection. That's what they chose for him. The process started at 9 p.m., with the lethal chemicals being released at 9:06 p.m. He was declared dead at 9:11 p.m. After his body was cremated, the ashes were given to his son. Now, a little bit of trivia about Muhammad. His last meal consisted of chicken and red sauce and some cakes. And he also declined to make a statement before they gave him his lethal dose of cocktails there. So, well, that was kind of a lot to digest, eh? I don't know how you feel about that, but that was pretty wild. I need a second to kind of like recoup my thoughts. I wrote down some things here that like weren't really in the books, and one of the things that like these guys did, well, like it said, like they left notes, they left things for the police to find. They actually would like write into the news station too, and they demanded like a payment of $10 million, and they would stop the killings. And that was of course over that like quick October crime spree when all that craziness was going down and people were getting shot, getting into buses and trying to pump like gas in their car, which is like absolutely wild. So they did leave a phone number, they did leave bank records, but those things were both made up. Like when the police looked into it, there wasn't a real phone number, and it also that bank account didn't exist either. So I didn't find too much on Muhammad because, you know, they like that's probably one of the quickest turnarounds I've ever seen when it comes to like an arrest, being told that you're being sentenced to death, and then actually being sentenced to death like less than 10 years into the prison sentence. There's people who have been on death row for like 20 or 30 years, so that just goes to show how high profile, how hated this guy was. They went out of their way to get him. Malvo, on the other hand, I don't know if it's genuine remorse or if it's just, you know, he's trying to get sympathy to want to be released one day, but he has actually taken time out. He's written letters to all the families, seeking, you know, I don't know if exactly seeking forgiveness, but like he has apologized to all the families, as shallow or as like unheartfelt as it might be. I don't know. When you kill that many people, like I don't really think you could have feelings. But at the same time, you know, if he's programmed by a soldier to be a soldier, there's a lot of those guys that do it in a different way. They come back, they live completely normal lives, different circumstances, of course, like one's during war, one's during, you know, killing innocent people, which is pretty fucked up. So I don't know if it was during that interview with William Shatner or if it was like another time, but Malvo also claimed, again, this could be for sympathy, but he was like, he claimed that like him and Muhammad were actually like in a relationship, and that Muhammad would like abuse him and had groomed him in like weird ways, you know. And in a lot of ways it does make sense when you think about how quick those murders were, and they were all committed by Malvo, who had become trained, which is crazy when you think of it, with Muhammad being the marksman. But these are two guys that literally spent, and there's footage of this, they spent like 12 hours a day sometimes at a lot of these shooting ranges and stuff like that. Like, they were both members. Muhammad being, you know, the marksman he was, he would actually play games with people, like take bets on target shooting and stuff like that. So that's kind of crazy. Just a couple more little things here. Lee Boyd Malvo actually had a request denied. He's trying to legally change his name because he feels like it'll keep him safer if he is able to transfer to another prison, like another Supermax or general population and such, right? Like, people look up who you are, they're gonna see you're the DC sniper. You know, you kind of got a mark on your head, especially from everything I've read. When serial killers go to prison, like, they're pretty well, depending on what they did, they're like marked men. Nobody wants anything to do with them. They're pretty well loners, like they're freaks. Nobody wants anything to do with that sort of thing. Got a little bit of a frog in my throat here, but you know, I kind of think we hit the nail on the head when it comes to everything we need to know about these two cold-blooded killers. One of them executed already, the other one going up for parole sometime soon. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I can say that this has been Dane Johnson 3_16, aka Gravity, the man who has never met a mic he didn't like. I told you not to worry, because I'll always tell you a serial killer story. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe.